Hi, I'm Mike Boyce. The circle, which I'm a member in my spiritualist church, have decided it's high time we put something together on chemtrails. And so here is my video. Now, the subject of chemtrails has been in the public but not closely looked at. Of course, governments and the media greatly discourage it being looked at for quite some time. And I'm going to suggest just one out of literally hundreds of pieces of evidence, pieces of information that you can find. I'm going to suggest just one video on YouTube that I was going to say you might care to look at. I'm pretty sure you won't care to look at it, but which you probably need to look at. It's called What in the World Are They Spraying? And it was uploaded to YouTube in December 2010. That's 3 years. Obviously the material in it was put together somewhat earlier, so this is 3-year-old information. There hasn't been a public storm. There hasn't been suitable action by government. In fact, the spraying has become worse and worse. At some point, a stop must be put to it. Okay, so what in the world are they spraying? Well, the video clip particularly drew attention to aluminium, or for those on the other side of the Atlantic, aluminum, but also barium and strontium and titanium. There is evidence of other materials, and possibly one of the most worrying is the spraying of human blood cells. There's no point in spraying human blood cells unless they contain something. And although this isn't proven, there is circumstantial evidence to suggest that these blood cells contain viruses, possibly AIDS, that's been spoken of, and other things detrimental to health. The heavy metals, the aluminium and so forth, will increase the incidence, as indeed has happened, of Alzheimer's and cancer. And who knows where it will stop. Anthrax is clearly a possibility, since governments developed anthrax as a chemical weapon many years ago, and they still have considerable stockpiles, and if they want to get rid of them, well, hey, why not spray them over the population? Now, this is out there in the unofficial media, so how should it be viewed? The standard I bring is that of the Supreme Court of England and Wales, contained in the so-called White Book. These rules of evidence applied by High Court judges, which in my youth I somewhat learned. And it has always been my model where judgment arises to apply the standards that would traditionally be applied by an English High Court judge. And that is, so far as I am able, that is what I will try and do. And I can pretty much hear what a judge might say, looking at the evidence, looking at the factual scientific recordings of levels of poisons discovered under where chemtrails have been, and they've been practically everywhere. these levels show, perhaps hundreds of times, the safe limit and normal limit of aluminium, strontium, etc., etc. So, from time to time, members of governments, and when I want a figure, because it is a personal issue, a figure to refer to in government, I shall speak of David Cameron, because I'm British and he is at the moment Prime Minister of the country in which I live. But the same may be said not only of Mr. Obama, but all other people powerful in the world's governments. Far too many to name. It seems to me that they must know what is going on. It would be a mind-boggling and utterly gross dereliction of public duty if they didn't know what was going on. And even just, if they didn't know, just hearing the evidence, then that should prompt intense inquiry. In Britain, at the very least, a royal commission led by a High Court judge, with very great powers to compel evidence from Army and Air Force chiefs and heads of companies and so forth. That is what would happen if they weren't, these people, David Cameron and all the others, seeking to hide what is going on. So applying the rules of the Supreme Court, applying the rules of a High Court judge, I conclude from this, as a matter of what is reasonable and believable, that David Cameron does know very well what is happening, as do all others in serious senior positions in government in all countries. But more than this, it isn't merely just a gross dereliction of public duty not to protect all of us. It amounts to conspiracy and collusion and being part of a joint venture whereby, if toxic substances are being spread on us with the intention of killing and injuring, then, and this is a conclusion that a jury might well consider, the question would be, on what basis is David Cameron not guilty of attempted murder? Because you see, aluminium will kill you. The other toxins will kill you. And these have been proven to be spread. And obviously, it would be assumed by a court, whether it be true or not, and it must be true, that David Cameron knows and approves. If it were otherwise, how should he behave? Well, it is obvious. There should be an inspection of all aircraft flying in British airspace. If the mechanisms for spraying toxins or anything else into the atmosphere, other than the normal engine exhaust, if the apparatus for producing chemtrails is present, then the aeroplane concerned should be grounded. This is obvious. This is his duty. This doesn't happen. Many of the planes will be our airplanes. But an interesting thing from my youth I remember, and I'll share it with you. There I was sitting in court, age of about 20 or so, and there was a NATO exercise going on, and tornadoes were flying over the courthouse from time to time at something like 200 feet, creating a shattering noise. The High Court judge who was conducting proceedings spoke to his clerk and said, "Speak to the commander of the local airbase and ask him to stop overplying my court while it's in session." The clerk after a time came back and said, "The commander sends his apologies and says this is a NATO exercise." Without a blink, the judge said, "Please go back, inform the commander that if one more tornado or any other plane flies over my court, I will send a bailiff to arrest him for contempt of court." Clark duly did that. No further planes flew over the court. That is my idea of the rule of law. Of course, the US Air Force can be prevented. Their planes can be inspected on US Air Force bases in Britain. Of course, planes that do not wish to comply can be brought down. Hopefully not shot down, but certainly brought down. During the Cold War, we did that with the Russian planes. Of course, that should be done. That is David Cameron's clear duty. That he does not do that endangers you, that is each of you, and your children, and your grandchildren, and the planet. There's also this. When politicians tell stupid and obvious lies, we've grown used to that. There is no honour in politics. There hasn't been for many years. Only soit qui mal y pense. The badge of Edward III, and emblazoned in the Houses of Parliament, chambers, has become a joke. It wasn't a joke 100 years ago. I'm sorry, it's a joke now. Honour has left those who think evil. They have no honour. And they have no truthfulness. If Cameron lies about a serious threat to you, your children and your grandchildren, is there anything at all about which he will not lie? And I'm sorry, that is true of all of them. So the threat to you and your family doesn't come from anywhere out there, it comes from your government. Now, what is the purpose of spraying these deadly substances by what may amount to hundreds of tons, cumulatively and ongoing? What is the purpose? There is Agenda 21, which always lurks in the background as a proposal to kill 9/10 of the world's population to make it more manageable, because there are simply too many human beings. As a tool towards doing that, if you kill off the plants and wildlife through aluminium and other toxins, and then Monsanto produces aluminium-resistant seeds, farmers will have no choice but to buy their seeds from Monsanto. And so the stranglehold of tyranny will become absolute. It's not for nothing that people like Lord Melchett resisted GM crops It's not for nothing that they be banned, but if all natural crops are dying off because they have been poisoned, to stay alive we might be left with no choice, and then in a very open sense we will be slaves. I'll share something else with you. I became disillusioned with politics in my early 20s. Before that, I was associated with a conservative, I suppose you'd now call it a think tank, set up under the authority of Ted Heath, who at the time was Prime Minister. And a working group within their group looked at mutually assured destruction, the nuclear deterrent. And me, being even that somewhat awkward, said, well, I think we have to consider other ways of mass killing. Let us look at chemical and biological weapons. And I remember looking at a 20-volume, very, very heavy, physically heavy, work called Some Problems in Chemical and Biological Warfare. The truth of the matter is that actually it's never worked. In the First World War, there's a story that the Germans fired mustard gas at the British trenches, but the wind changed and the mustard gas blew back over the German trenches. This is very much the story of chemical warfare. By and large, it doesn't work. It works enough to annoy people, certainly if they realise who is the cause. So when you think of aeroplane security, don't think of somebody who might have explosives in the heel of their shoe. Think of what is coming out of the back of aeroplanes. Security is the word for hiding the wrongdoing of governments. They've always done wrong. Governments make the rules, but almost invariably they cannot keep their own rules. They don't. But this particular crime exceeds all other crimes ever committed in the existence of the planet, in the existence of humanity. No crime has ever come close to the destruction, deliberate destruction of the health, well-being, food supply of billions of people. Very possibly with the intention of killing the vast majority of them and enslaving the rest. That is something of which we should take notice. Now you may say, well, that is a conclusion. It is. There is not evidence of it. Well, there is evidence of the act. And the hiding and the failure to stop it is evidence of the intention. When someone sets out to hide something, you may safely assume they have no good motive. When what is being hidden is as terrible as this, you may safely assume a very bad motive. Others will be able to tell you more technically about chemtrails, but I offer you these forensic thoughts from the point of view of how a High Court judge might address a jury if it ever came to trial. Thank you. Bye.